We are all important. And we're not all important because we're the same, because we have commonalities, because we look like one another, we have arms, we have legs. We matter because we're different. We matter because each and every single one of us has a unique perspective on life, has a unique perspective on the way we view things that are commonplace around us. I can't tell you how many thousands and thousands of individuals I've had the honor of meeting in my life, I've had the honor of connecting with in my life. And one thing is in common with each and every single one of them, no matter where they came from, no matter what they've done, no matter what profession they're part of, is that each and every single one of them is different. Every single one of them is different. They each have a unique perspective on life that I've learned and that is uniquely them. I cannot be replaced by someone else's thoughts. It cannot be, sort of approximated by a group's thinking. It's unique, it's powerful, and it's singular. And once it's gone, once that thought is gone, once that individual is gone from this planet, we lose that piece, that perspective. We lose a piece of the puzzle. And I firmly believe that we need all of us, every single one of us, to contribute our perspectives, our viewpoints to the world so that we can better understand the reality that we're living in. I don't think that we're going to do it right if we don't all work together to do it. Thoughts and ideas are everywhere. They permeate our work, our homes, our world. Some help, others confuse. Yet what we really want, what many of us really dream of, is the one real thing we have in common. We all want to speak, to express ourselves in whatever way we choose. This is my safe space for you, just for you, to express your views absent of any judgments or opinions. I just want to be there for you, to hear what you really have to say and embrace your truth, your reality, your experience. So this podcast about why you matter really allows us to really delve into some of the deeper perspectives, some things that challenge the way we think, the way we understand the world. And I hope that we go through this journey together, you and I, and we understand and discover how truly miraculous and different and diverse we really are. Because I've been blown away by these podcasts, and I hope that that they bring something to your life. The first one we're going to talk about today, the first subject today, is on the Covenant House. Now, the Covenant House is a place for youths that are homeless, that are wandering around, that they, for whatever reason, they don't have a home. And it has a very unique perspective on the way that they're going to help youth. And I'd like to share that perspective through the eyes of the people that work there, through the eyes of some of the youths that have experienced that care and experienced that environment. And to sort of, bring two key points to the picture so that we can really break the bubble about what is going on with youths and really begin to question, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? Many of us are parents, right? I've got 4 beautiful kids, and we all feel for all those youths in some way, shape, or other that are on the street. None of us, I confidently say, really want them to be on the street. The question is, what can we do about it? How can you bring your very unique perspective into this picture and help be part of the solution? And just by listening today, just by being here today, you are taking that first step to understanding how you can fit into this picture. All right. So the Covenant House, who are they? Well, they were founded in 1972. It's got a long history of helping homeless youths get off the street. Their passion, though, is what drew me to them. It's the fact that they were so unconditional in their love for the kids. And you'll see it, you'll hear it in one of the staff members, Jumbe's response. You can really hear, how unconditional they are. I have a deep respect for individuals like you that contribute their lives to working with the youth. You can probably get a better job somewhere else out there and make a lot more money, right? We all know that, right? But you choose to do this, and I feel, almost, I'll be honest, I feel a little guilty, right? That I'm not doing it as well. Like, I'm not really out there and doing all the hard work that you guys are doing to be there. And I just want to know what drew you to the Covenant House? What made it, something that you wanted to, contribute your life, part of your life to?
Well, the first time I ever heard of Covenant House is when my grandmother, who's still alive, and I'm grateful for that. She's in her 90s now.
Wow.
She, for as long as I've been living, and probably longer, she has been donating to Covenant House. And so she would receive the letters in the mail from Covenant House, and it would have these nice packaged letters that would talk about different youth and what they've gone through and what their aspirations are and so on and so forth. And she would just put her donation in and send it back. And so that was my first experience ever seeing what Covenant House is. I didn't really understand what it was, but I knew the basics of what it did, what it was for.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't part of my consciousness. It's something that I wanted to do or be involved in, but it was, something that I knew existed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about after college, and I relocate to the big city in Atlanta, and I'm looking for some meaningful work to do. I had work, but it was just paying the bills. And I knew I wanted to get involved in something that could change and transform the society that I lived in and impact the lives of people there. Covenant House.
Wow.
Popped back up on the radar. I joined as an AmeriCorps member. And for anybody who is not familiar with AmeriCorps, it's an organization or a means of doing good work in the society, in the community. And I had experience with AmeriCorps already. So I knew, okay, if I want to do some good work, let me go ahead the AmeriCorps route. And I saw that Covenant House was looking for AmeriCorps members. So it was on the top of my list. I had about 10 places that I applied to. Covenant House was number one. They're the only one that called me. And the rest is history. I'm glad that they did. Once I got in, I was very familiar with the kind of work that they were doing, because just to give a backdrop on why it is I'm still doing this kind of work. My father started what we call a halfway house in regard to people who get in trouble with the law, and they have to wait until they get a sentence or they get to meet with a judge or have a trial date. So for young people, for my peers at the time, and this is in Louisiana, there was no middle ground. As soon as you get in trouble, it doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 20 years old, you would go to a youth detention center.
Wow.
And this is, you're not guilty because you haven't been convicted of anything. In the United States, they say you're innocent until proven guilty. That doesn't mean anything in regard to that. You still go to jail until you're proven guilty. And so you have these young people who, because there's no mediation, they're going to youth jails for months until they go to trial. By the time they go to trial, they're institutionalized to the way that jails works. And even if they are acquitted, they're likely to go back.
Yeah.
So my father created this halfway house in which people in the community, the young people, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, when they would get in trouble with the law,
Yeah.
they had a place to stay in the community.
That's fantastic.
And they lived there. And he helped to expose them to different things, keep them in touch with their families, sometimes reunify them with their families, get them other mental health services they may have need, drug rehab services, all these different things that were a diversion from being incarcerated. And I got to see the impact of that, not only on the youth, but on the community that they lived in, that I lived in.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's incredible.
It was so amazing to me. I appreciated it at the time, but in hindsight, I really appreciate it when I come into a place like Covenant House, because it was so familiar to me. I saw these young people living here who did not have anything, any middle ground, any mediation. And Covenant House was it. It gave them a means of getting out of homelessness so that they would not have to fight on the street to survive and possibly get in trouble with the law and then end up incarcerated, end up falling through the cracks, end up forgotten about. And so I fell in love with Covenant House because I knew that it worked. It was something close to my heart, close to my family. And now it's something that's close to my future.
It's incredible. I can't believe what your father just did and what you're following in that footsteps. It's incredible. I mean, how many lives has he saved? How many lives has he lifted, from the veil of, the potential prison sentences, the mental and emotional scarring that happens of having to go to prison at such a young age. It's not even in the realm of possibility for me to even understand that. And I think for a lot of our viewers, it's not even, it's a different world. It's a different world that you put into, and they're not even guilty. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know anything about that. They're not even guilty. And how could they possibly be put into prison, right? It's unheard of. It's unbelievable. And is this practice going on today, Louisiana? Like, is it still happening today?
As far as incarcerating youth as they're waiting for trial, it's the norm, not only in Louisiana, but many places throughout the nation. If you don't have in places like that where there is no halfway house or no intermediate services, they put them there because they want to make sure that they can go to trial when it's time for them to go to trial. Right. They don't have any legal recourse because they don't have any money to pay for a lawyer. And so they're put in places where they're just detained until they can be seen by a judge. And that's the normal practice, and that's a practice that many of our youth at Covenant House have had to deal with, as they're in a situation where they don't have resources, not only to get a house or to get a car, but to make sure that they're protected against injustices in the legal system. And when they come to Covenant House, fortunately, they are afforded those resources so that they can manage their legal situations and move forward, just like anybody would want their children to move forward if they have some situation where they need legal assistance or otherwise. Covenant House is a place where they can come and they can get those resources at no charge to themselves.
Oh, that's incredible. That's amazing. Wow. I have to admit, I had no idea. I must apologize ahead of time for my ignorance. I had no idea what detention centers were, what halfway houses were. I've heard the terms. I didn't know. Until this podcast, until this interview, I truly did not grasp what was going on. And I did some research. And according to a study published on prison policy, over 48,000 youths are in detention centers, halfway houses, every single day throughout the United States. It's big. It's huge. That is a lot of children that are in this jail type setting. And if it wasn't for Jumbe's father creating halfway house, creating something that was based on home, on some semblance of home, most of these kids would just be in the jail system. And as Jumbe said, they would, even if they got off, even if they're not their accusations were false and they were dismissed by the courts, they would still be in that jail system for weeks, sometimes months. How much of that is that imprinting on their lives? I was angry. I was frustrated when I heard about this. I couldn't believe that I didn't even know about it. How could children be just taken off the streets like that, be put into a prison-like system, simply because there's no other way to track them? There's no other way. They have no money, they have no parents, they've got no one around them. There's no way to ensure that they make it to the court on time. I understand that the government is doing the best that it can, given what it's got. But certainly, there has to be a better way. This is a bit of a shock for me, and something I promise you I will be getting into as we move forward in these podcasts. It's a surprise. I didn't expect it, but like life, when you're given a surprise like this, it's a call to action, and I intend to dig deeper into this. But for now, let's move into the next portion. What's it like? So if I'm a youth and I'm coming into the Covenant House, what's it like to come in there? What are some of the things that happen to me? What are some of the support structures that I get? I know you alluded to the fact that they get all the legal support, they get whatever, kind of emotional, psychological support that they need. Walk us in the steps of a youth and what it's like for them as they walk into the Covenant House, if you have a particular example.
Well, I can't speak from the perspective of the youth, but as a staff member, I can say that when they come through the door, we try to find out if they need something to eat. Mental health services, legal services, case management services, those things are great. But if you're hungry, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
The first thing you want is to put something in your stomach. And so we try to feed their stomachs, make sure that they have nourishment that they need.
So you say try to feed them. Some of them don't want to eat?
Some of them don't want to eat because they're not used to eating. Wow. We had, for example, a young lady who came probably about 3 weeks ago, and she was on the street with her boyfriend. That's where we found her in outreach. We invited her to come in with her boyfriend who had been with us before. Came in, he took some food, and she said no, she didn't want to eat anything. So after giving him his food, gave her a bag anyway, and just said, well, just in case you get hungry later, now you have some food. And she revealed that it's not that she didn't want to eat. It's just that she hadn't eaten in so long that she was accustomed to not eating. And so she took the food and she was appreciative. But we're glad that she explained that. And also that we understand that situation to the extent that even if they say no, we make the food available to them, so they're not deprived of anything that they need.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. I can't even imagine what it's like not to eat that long, and you can't even put food in your stomach. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are some of the typical things once they come in? What else happens to them? Like once they get fed, once they feel like, that they stay over? Do they go back out? Is it really up to them? Is it something that they choose, or?
From the beginning to the end, it's up to them. Nobody is forced to be at Covenant House.
Okay.
Nobody can be even court ordered to stay at Covenant House. It's absolutely their choice from day one to the last day that they're here, whether or not they want to stay, what the terms are of their case management, because we may have ideas about what a young person needs, and we may be right about what a young person needs. However, we need to listen to the voice of that young person about what it is that they need in the moment. And sometimes we don't look at the moment as adults, but they do. That's all they're looking at. Yeah. So we ask them if they would like something to eat. We provide that for them. If they need any clothes, because sometimes they just come with the clothes on their back and the clothes aren't clean. So they can take a shower, they can freshen up, they can wash their clothes, they can get new clothes. And perhaps all they want is a place to lay their head and be warm. And maybe that's all they feel like they need in the moment. And so we'll provide that. But at the moment in which they express that they need something more, they express, hey, I need some physical health services.
Hmm.
Hey, I'd like to get an apartment. Hey, I really want a better job. I want to get more than minimum wage. Or, I didn't finish high school. I didn't get my GED. I'd like to finish. I'd like to get that. We're there for them. We provide those things. We put it all on the table. It's kind of like a buffet, I guess.
Yeah.
We put it all out there. You don't have to take everything at once. You can take some now, go sit down, enjoy your meal. If you're still hungry, you come back and get something else. Or you can get the same thing over and over and over again, if that's what you like. But we make everything that we have available to them. So whatever their needs happen to be, we can make sure that we can fulfill them whenever they need it to.
That's amazing. That's amazing because, from what I've experienced before, in not myself personally, but from speaking with different individuals in this structures, that usually the kids, the authority figures, have always disappointed them. And I'm speaking specifically from experience from the adoption community, and so the last thing they want is someone telling them what to do. And you guys have sounds like it's amazing. You have this really non-judgmental, non sort of like, you're not trying to take care of them or tell them what's right or what's wrong. You're not encumbering them with all these expectations. Hey, you take some meal, well, you have to do this, and you want that, you have to go there. You try to let them fit the covenant house into their process, rather than let them fit into the process of the covenant house. Does that make sense from what I'm hearing?
Yes, especially initially when they come in, because of course there's apprehension. They don't know any of us.
Yeah.
And they don't know what our intentions are. They just know what they need. And so we want to make sure that they feel comfortable, but more than just comfortable, we want them to feel safe. We want them to feel secure, because we know they're coming from a place 9 times out of 10 where they're not safe, where they don't feel secure, when there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear and apprehension. And we don't want them to continue on in that spirit of being afraid, of being anxious, of being uncertain. So we try to provide that structure for them. And that's where we do bring them into things that are very structured. So we have meal times at certain times. We don't have lunch all day. We don't have breakfast. It's not IHOP. We don't have breakfast all day,
Yeah.
But we do have breakfast every day. We do have lunch every day. And we do have dinner every day. And so they can get into a routine where they can say, all right, I can be confident that I'm going to eat tomorrow. And I can be confident that I'm going to eat tomorrow at this particular time.
Exactly.
And those are the kind of structures that we provide to them, so that they can know, now I can plan my week out. I don't have to survive from moment to moment. I can actually plan what I'm going to do next week and be secure that as long as I'm taking care of my business, I've got a place to stay. I've got a roof over my head. I've got a bed. I've got a warm pillow. I've got food in my stomach. And so now I can get ready to take care of the difficult things as far as moving forward into independence.
It's huge. It's huge. I love it. I love it. I had no idea. This is amazing. I mean, if I had built something like this, I would want it like that. That this is exactly, the kind of support where it's unconditional. It doesn't have any strings attached. You're there for their process. You're there to supplement them and give them the support they need, when they need it, how they need it. Right? It's huge. You've just made my day. This is fantastic. This is very cool. Very, very cool. And so how do you guys go out and get these kids? Do they just come to you guys? Do you guys go out there and look for them? Like, how is it that these kids come by the Covenant House?
A variety of ways. We do have an outreach team. As I mentioned before, we sometimes we encounter people on the street who need our help, and we're able to bring them in at the moment. Other times we just let them know, we inform them, because they're not always ready to just come in if they're on the street at the moment, or if they're in the situation where they need housing. They don't really trust the person telling them, hey, we have housing for you, we have a shelter. Or I just said that buzzword, shelter. When they think of shelter, they don't really want to go to a shelter, especially as an adolescent, because they don't want to be around a lot of older people who have been on the street longer than them, and they feel threatened by it a lot of times.
Of course.
So they'd rather be in a situation where they're around their age group on the street, or they're hopping from place to place, whether it's apartment to apartment, house to house, or abandoned building to abandoned building, as long as they're with their peer group. And so getting them to understand that this is a place where they can be with their peer group and it doesn't feel like a shelter, a quote unquote shelter, is something that their peers excel at. A lot of times people will come here because their peers have informed them. They may have a friend who's already in the Covenant House or who's come through the Covenant House and say, hey, you should go check the Covenant House out. They can help you out. Or our youth also go on outreach with us. They're part of the outreach team. Mm-hmm. They know where they stay. They know where they sleep at night on the streets. We don't know that because we're not coming from where they come from, but they know, and they're able to reach out to their peers and say, hey, come on and stay with us. It's a safe place. It's a place where you can get your needs met, a place where you can grow, be yourself, and move forward in life. And so that's one way. The other way is we do have a web presence and we do share that. So, a lot of adolescents are on the internet all the time. And so being online is important. It's vital because that gives them just one click. They can go to the website or they can just search us on the web and find out and then reach out that way so that we can give them the information they need, pull them in out of the darkness and pull them into the light of Covenant House. And so there's those couple ways. We also have big events where the general public who are not homeless and who don't know about the need to pull adolescent youth out of homelessness, they can see Covenant House and they can see the work that we do. And then they can reach out and make sure that anybody else in need can come to Covenant House. And their eyes are open in that way because a lot of people have blinders on as it relates to 18 to 24-year-olds who are in homelessness because you don't think about that age group as being homeless. And so the campaigns that we have to reach out to the public, to let them know that this is a reality and they need to keep their eyes open and provide us as a resource. That's another way in which we're able to bring young people into Covenant House.
Amazing, huh? You heard this. The buffet, the Covenant House buffet, as Jumbe mentioned. Now that's awesome. I love it. The buffet of food, of resources, of support, that concept that he brought out, it's huge. It's amazing. It really blew me away in so many ways. I was listening to it and going, this is so simple, yet so wonderful. What child who's living on the street wouldn't want to go to the Covenant House and just enjoy a buffet? The buffet could be food, just go in, grab a meal, go, grab a meal and go, grab a meal and go. That's all. They can keep going meal. The buffet also includes support structures, services, psychological services, job services, all these other services that they offer. But it's a buffet. You take what you want. You're not forced to it. You don't have to take it. As Jumbe mentioned, you can come back for the same thing again and again and again. There's no issue. You can decide to stay there, not stay there. It's up to you. It's your call. And if you say, hey, you know what? I want a job, boom, they're there for you. If you say, I want food, boom, they're there for you. And the other thing that's important that he mentioned is that it's coming at a consistent pace. So the food's not served every day. They're not an IHOP, right, as you mentioned. They come in at a consistent time, right? And that's important because those children, our children there that are on the streets, they lack structure. They don't know when their next meal is going to come in. They don't know if someone is going to come there is going to hurt them or help them. And maybe they meet someone on the street who says, I'm going to help them, and one day doesn't show up. Well, at the Covenant House, they will show up on time. And when they say they're going to eat at 6, they're going to eat at 6. There is no if or buts about it, and everyone eats at 6, right? So everyone is together, and everyone has a fixed, solid structure. But that buffet concept, remember we talked about at the beginning of the segment, how do you get these kids off the street when they don't have to come? It's not an obligation, but they need it. Well, how do you do it? Well, you present the Covenant House buffet. I love it. Beautiful, beautiful, sophisticated, simple concept. So I'm excited for this, and I'm excited for the next segment that we're going to hear about. All right, so this next segment of the Why You Matter Covenant House deals with the topic of understanding some of the more detailed elements about how the Covenant House works. We talked about the buffet before, but now you're going to really get into some of the nitty-gritty of some of the ways that they work, the ways that they operate at the Covenant House. And after listening to Jumbe, I realized that I wanted to help. I've always wanted to help when I saw youth on the street, you know? Sometimes I would give them food, sometimes money, which is not always good. And then sometimes I would call the cops and say, you know what, I see someone on the street, and I really think that they could be in danger. But in reality, you know, if we had the Covenant House and we had the number to the Covenant House, we'd be able to do something about it. In this podcast, in this segment of this podcast, you'll be able to hear about what they say is some of the best options if you ever meeting someone on the street or you're driving by a homeless youth on the street. These are some of the things you can do. And as I promised you in this segment, we're going to outline some of the challenges, some of the issues, some of the opportunities, but we'll always give you some potential solutions, some ways you can contribute, some ways that you can make a difference. So listen to this and let's talk after. Cheers. That's amazing. And I'm glad you brought that up. So if someone's listening to this podcast and listening to you and saying, well, what can I do to help? You know, I'm just driving around in my car, or I'm just, you know, listening at home or whatever. What can they do to help? What can they do to really provide some feedback if, for instance, they're driving down the street and they see a youth? What are some of the steps that you guys would recommend that they do? Is there something that they can do to make them get to the Covenant House?
If they see a youth that's driving down the street, that youth looks like somebody in need, then they can access the Covenant House website and make sure that not only that youth knows about Covenant House, but that Covenant House knows about that youth. Oh. We've gotten countless calls from strangers, people who don't know us or anybody at Covenant House, and people who don't know the youth that they see, but they see the need, and they'll call Covenant House and they say, hey, I've got this young person. He's 20 years old. He doesn't have a place to stay. Wanted to know if you guys can help. Simple as that. And then we'll do the rest. We're like, okay, we've got a bed open. How can he get here? Do we need to go pick him up? So on and so forth. Yeah. And so just making that connection, going to the website is covenanthousega.org. Yeah. They can see all the information as far as the phone number, or if they need to send us a message via the internet, just so that they can reach out and make sure that we know that there's a youth in need and where that youth is, and also share that information with the youth so that they can reach out themselves whenever they're ready. Maybe they might not be ready at the moment, but just letting them know they can just go to this website or go to Covenant House Georgia on their social media accounts and reach out that way. That saves lives more times than it doesn't.
It's huge. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to start doing that now. I didn't know that. And so that's fantastic, because I often see, youths on the street, and I don't really know what to do. I'm just driving by, and sometimes I give them whatever food I have, but it's not something that, I really know how to do that, because I don't feel even comfortable to approach them, because I don't know if they'll make them feel uncomfortable that someone is approaching them, an adult is approaching them. So out of like respect for them, or out of respect for what's going on, and, I just give them whatever I have. But this is fantastic, because this would allow them to get some support right away, as long as we send it to you guys. So this is huge. And do you by any chance have the phone number? It doesn't matter. I'll be posting it on the podcast, but if you do happen to have it.
Yes, 404-589-0163.
That's awesome. Beautiful. You know it by heart.
Know it by heart. I've called it so often, and I've told other people in need the number so often that it's just memorized. I don't know some of my relatives' numbers by heart, but I know the Covenant House number by heart.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. All right, now I feel silly, right? That was easier than I thought. There's a phone number, there's a website. You can call them and let them know that a youth is on the street. You can provide that number to the youth if you happen to be walking by them or something like that, or provide them with the Covenant House website. It ain't that complicated. I don't know why I made it so complicated. It's part and parcel of who I am, perhaps. Here's the thing. Click on the button on the bottom left of your screen, and you'll be directed directly to the Covenant House with the phone number, with the ways that you can access them as well. And I've also made these special cards, or that you can print out, and so that you can have them in your car. So that if you have them, you just print it out on one piece of paper, and then there's a bunch of lines that you can just cut up into little cards. Very easy. Put it in your car, and next time you see a youth, provide that with a little bit of food, or provide that to them, so that they can perhaps go in and call the Covenant House and get some help. So very excited by that, and very excited about the ways that we can contribute. And at the end of this podcast as well, you can also see different links for people who just want to donate, who want to know more about the Covenant House, who want to provide some volunteering services for the Covenant House, and for different aspects to help youth. So there's many different opportunities, many different calls to action that you're going to find on the link, and you can definitely choose which one you like. They will definitely be there available for you, so that you could do something that fits with you, with your time, with your effort. And just remember, of course, that just by being here, by listening, by recognizing, by opening your mind and your heart to our children on the street, you are doing something. You're providing a reality, a shared reality. You're contributing to that shared reality that we're all living in. You're helping break the bubble. And what you do today, but just by listening, will help reverberate through everyone you speak to about this subject, everyone that you touch about this subject in the future. So thank you for being here. All right, and I'm excited for the next segment, and I hope you join me for that. And so in terms of when they come in, let's say they want to have some kind of support, they want to have, like you said, legal representation or therapists, or they want to stay at the Covenant House. What are some of the different services and offerings that they have if they wanted to get that support?
Well, let's say they come in and all they need is a job. They've got a job, they're working somewhere, fast food, making a minimum wage, and they realize, okay, this is not going to get it done. I'm not going to be able to afford to maintain housing with this job. So I need some more income. I need more skills. So I'm coming to you guys. Of course, yes, I'm homeless, but I also would like to increase my income so that I can maintain housing.
Yeah, that's huge.
Well, we've got a workforce development program in which we partner with multiple companies in the community to develop particular training modules so that they can be skilled and certified in the industry of their choice. Some of those things are not through community partners. Some of those things are just in-house because we have the skill set, we have the mind at Covenant House to do it, but most of them are with partners in the community. The benefit of the partners in the community is that these are companies that hire. So as they're trained, as they're certified, now they have recourse to a company that could hire them or even bring them in on a paid internship so they can get the skill set and get the experience to move forward in that particular career. And so that's one thing.
Huge.
It is.
Wow. So you partner with these companies, these fantastic companies, and then they internship them or they go through the training, but keep an eye on them so that when they graduate, they're ready to bring them in. This is huge. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. One of the prides of partnership that we have is with Delta Airlines. We've
Mm.
got youth who have gone through the Delta Career Readiness Program, been mentored by Delta employees, prepared for an interview with Delta, and we've got youth who have matriculated through that program, graduated, and been employed at Delta Airlines. So imagine going from homelessness at 20 years old to being able to fly around the world at 21.
Wow. That's huge. I
It's
can't.
it's
Wow. Wow. This is beyond expectation. I can't believe that. That's huge. This is amazing what you guys do. And I heard that you guys also have psychological support as well, because a lot of them are going to
yes,
come in, with a lot of issues that they face, a lot of trauma that they faced.
we do, and we provide that to everyone. They don't have to accept it.
Hmm.
We encourage everyone to take advantage of it because number one, it's free, and we know with healthcare, once you're out of this situation, it's very expensive. So we
Yes.
want to provide them with what they need as far as mental health support and psychological services right now on the spot as they need it as they're dealing with these traumas, because every single one of them is dealing with trauma. Not the same traumas, but they're all dealing with trauma. To be homeless, you're facing and you're struggling with some sort of trauma.
That's.
Even if you don't have any diagnoses,
Mhm.
you're dealing with trauma. And so we want to provide them with support so that they can deal with that trauma and not end up in a situation where they do get diagnosed with something because they didn't have treatment and support.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And they get paired with a social worker, right, as well?
They do. They get paired with the social worker. They get paired with the case manager who makes sure that whatever their needs are encapsulated in a case plan. So there can be a time frame, a realistic expectation for when things can get done, and a step-by-step process to accomplish their goals. Because if they come in and they want to have a job that pays $20 an hour, but they don't have a state ID, then we know, okay, the first step is not applying for jobs. The first step is getting an ID.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that they have an understanding of what those steps are, and we can support them in accomplishing each one of those steps toward their big goals of getting out of homelessness,
Hmm.
getting into independence and self-sufficiency.
That's huge. That's fantastic. Wow. This is it's not a simple sort of situation where they just come in and eat. Because that's really, I mean, I apologize for my ignorance, but that's really what I thought initially when I started working Covenant House, and then you guys blew me away with some of the meetings about the psychological support, the caseworker support. I mean, the education, and now I didn't even know about this partnership with jobs and all that. So this is a huge support, and all that is sort of encased in this attitude, this environment where they have unconditional love. They have this unconditional support. It's not something that they have to do. It's not something that they need to do. They can just come in and eat and walk away. They can come in and do some things and then walk away. So they have this setup. But what I would also like is that structure, because that's what I've heard from different organizations in terms of like the different nonprofits where a lot of kids or a lot of adults actually need structure. They want to know that food comes at a particular time. They want to know that they're going to have a meeting with someone, a caseworker at this time, and that person's going to be there, not going to leave them alone, that type of thing. So I think that's fantastic. Wow, this is for real. Like, it's okay. So I mentioned to you, it reminded me of a story, the segment. So it reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. It's like with the rabbit hole. The deeper you go, the weirder it gets, the more surreal it becomes, right? That's the story that came to my head as Jumbe was talking and stuck with me. I'm like, I feel like I'm in this rabbit hole with him, and we're just going through this, and he knows what's going on. He knows what's happening. I knew nothing. I'm just getting caught for the loop here. And it was amazing, that they weren't just feeding their bodies. They weren't just feeding their minds. They were feeding their souls. They were really taking care of them, right? They're not their parents. They cannot replace the structure that they've lost in their lives, the support system that they have in their lives. They don't even pretend to do that, right? But the Covenant House is actually working there to provide them with that unconditional source of love. That's the best they can do at the end of the day. If you drizzle down to every single service they provide, from the psychological to the job finding to everything else around them, like, it's all about just being there for them. You know, and what's really amazing, right, is this holistic approach, right? It can be as complex as dealing with drug abuse or violence abuse, right? Or it could be as important and significant as finding a job, finding a career, right? Finding a home, right? A roof under your head. All of them are important. And the Covenant House uses a holistic approach. With that buffet approach that Jumbe mentioned, you know, the child can choose what they need at that moment, what is pressing to them. And once they get what they need, whether it's food, support, any which way, any type of encouragement, then they come back for more. Wouldn't you? Because there's no obligation. There's no condition. And one thing that really struck me, and I'd like to take a shout out to that, is, you know, some of the great businesses like Delta Airlines that are partnering with the Covenant House, that are doing this incredible work and service to bring in these homeless children under the Covenant House, to train them, and then to employ them. This is huge. This is significant. Imagine, okay, one of our children, you, us, me, we're on the streets. We got no support structure. We got nothing. We can't even find a roof under our heads. We get to the Covenant House. We enter into a training program. 6 months, a year later, we're traveling the skies. We're going to Europe. We're going to Spain. We're going Africa. We're going all over the world. Just think about that. Think about the juxtaposition, the incredible transformation to one's life simply by going to the Covenant House, simply by using the services, and for all the great businesses, you know, that partner with them to bring these youths. And what better dedicated workers will you have, you know, who go through the training system, who diligently do the work? They are so grateful to those businesses, right? They're going to work in those businesses unlike any other worker who just sits there and sends out a resume and can be employed here or there or there. This is their life they're fighting for, and they're going to do the best job that they can. So kudos to all those businesses that partner with the Covenant House and similar other charities, of course, and provide a space, a home for these kids to not just have shelter over their head or money, but to have a future, a career that they can be proud of, that they can form a family with. I love it. I can't tell you how it feels to have heard that segment. Well, I hope that's been something that's changed a little bit about your perspective. It certainly has for mine. And I look forward to the next segment with you. I have a question, and feel free, you don't have to answer it.
Okay.
And it's something that I just think, you know, there's so much that we go through in our lives, and we process it with our eyes. And so much of what you told me right now doesn't, you know, for me, you know, being exposed a little bit in this, you know, I could see that, you know, there's so much more out there. There's so much more trauma and pain that's there, and what you guys go through, that is not so well tied up in a nice bow tie, and the kids are going to go do this and this and that. So If you're willing, and please feel free to, if you don't have anything to offer there, is if you could share maybe one or two of the harder stories that you've had to experience personally at the Covenant House. If there was anything that was really difficult that you've had to experience, so that our listeners can really understand that it's not just giving kids a home or giving kids a place, but these are kids that really come in great need. And you guys yourself have to deal with a lot of trauma, you know, and you guys have to deal with that impact on your lives and what you have to go through to be able to be there for them, because you're providing a safe space for them. But who's providing that safe space for you guys, right? And I know you guys have a lot of support structure there coming now, so I already know the answer to that. So I just wanted to get a sense for the viewers of what are some of the harder cases. I know you've talked about it, some of the easier ones, but some of the harder ones that you've had to face.
So the reality is that we can't save everyone. We can't really save anyone. And that's the harsh reality, is that all we can do is provide the means for them to move forward if they so choose. We could have Covenant House open to all the youth and have enough beds for every single homeless youth in the state. And all of them could say, no, I don't want to go there. That's the reality. Yeah. Nobody is forced to be here. We can't force anybody to move forward and get out of homelessness. And with that being said, most of them choose to come when there is a bed available. However, there are those cases in which they come and they don't get out of homelessness before they're 24 years old. They don't move forward into a situation in which they are stable, in which they have dealt with their psychological issues, dealt with their drug addictions, dealt with the traumas that they brought to the door. Mm. I can remember a case in which there was a young lady. She had been living on the streets for years. That was her life. She was accustomed to living on the street. She was accustomed to selling her body for money, for food, for housing. Whoever wanted to have sex with her and had something to provide as far as material, whether it was drugs, whether it was a place to stay for the night, whether it was some food, what have you. That was her life. And she came to us with all of that trauma, all of that baggage. And we worked hard to get her to move forward. We worked hard to help her get rehabbed from her drug addiction. And I say drug addiction, but there were addictions. It was more than one substance. And all of the rage that she expressed, all of the outbursts and everything along the way, we dealt with it with grace and with love and absolute respect. At the end of the day, she did not get out of homelessness. She was with us several times. She tried again. And we did our best to be receptive to her needs and provide her with the resources that she needed to move forward. And it just so happens that I was her case manager. And so I was very intimately connected to planning, helping her along the way, working with the team to support her. And I remember driving down the street in one of the neighborhoods in Atlanta. And it was in the night, because I happened to be working a shift that I got off at 11 o'clock. And she was walking down the street, working the street. And she was clearly intoxicated, just wandering around. There were a lot of abandoned houses around her. And so I knew what that was. I knew that she was living the same lifestyle that she had come to us from day one. And at that point, there was nothing else Covenant House could do. She was too old to come back into the shelter. She was too old to receive any of the services that we had to offer, because we did not have any sort of drop-in center at the time for people who were older than our shelter or our residential age. And so there was nothing that Covenant House could do for her any longer. And I had to accept that as I drove by. I had to accept that and continue to work. Continue to try to work just as hard and just as sincerely for the next youth. that came onto my caseload.
I can't imagine what you must have gone through. I mean, you put so much effort into this. I can feel, how important she was to you. How did you, if I may ask, how did you deal with it after? How did you, sort of come to grips with it?
Well, I wasn't delusional about that reality before I stepped into this. So that helped. I didn't, it didn't rock my world as something that I didn't expect could happen. But the way that I deal with situations like that is to remember that all I can do is do the best that I can. I'm nobody's savior. I may do work that's life saving, but I'm not the savior.
I love that.
There are plenty of people in need. And so for everyone that may end up in that situation, there are more who still need help. And so I can't give up. I have to continue to do the work and continue to pour into each and every one of these youth, just as much as I did for her, and encourage my teammates to do the same. Because maybe there will be another young lady or another young man who comes in that similar situation. And because Covenant House has more resources than we had before, more supports than we had before, maybe this time that youth will be saved from that eventuality. And so it's only because we can see the future as far as the potential of Covenant House and continue to build that I'm able to continue to do this kind of work. Because if it were just like a one and done situation, like, all right, this youth you have a certain quota to meet, and this youth has to be in this situation for you to succeed, then I wouldn't be doing this work. But that's not what it is. It's about providing that unconditional love, like you said, that absolute respect, and realizing too that just because I saw her in that situation that day does not mean that her life didn't change later.
Yes.
Her life wasn't over. I wasn't broken because she was still alive. She still had an opportunity to move forward in some way. Maybe some other agency or some other individual would have been the one to move her forward and take her out of that situation, provide her with the opportunities. And she says, you know what? I'm ready. I'm going to do it now. And so there's still hope. There's still potential.
Absolutely. And I'd like to offer that perhaps what you gave her was a seed, and that seed one day may flower with someone else, like you mentioned, someone else's support. But I definitely think that, and I can't speak for her, I don't know her, but I definitely can feel that there's definitely some impact must have been there for her to know that there was some unconditional support. Whether or not she could at that moment in time in her process, as you said, be able to embrace it. That seed is still there. And I've seen this so much with so many different wonderful workers like yourself and people that dedicate their lives. There's so many people like my wife, she has an adoption agency and she helps parents and adoption families stay together. And sometimes it's not successful. Sometimes there's disruptions and it's rare, but it happens, and it's heartbreaking for her. It's heartbreaking for a team that works so hard for this. I don't know that pain. I come from a very luxurious world where I don't have that kind of situation, and I can't pretend, to know what you're going through, and what people like yourself that dedicate yourself to these individuals go through. It's not something you can just turn off when you go home.
Oh, no, it's not. It's something that, and you can't compartmentalize that, because it's something that if you do, it'll just corrode at your consciousness, or it just eat away at your consciousness. And it's something you have to process as a human being with fellow human beings, so that we can continue to do what we need to do to make life better for human beings. I mentioned that there was hope and there was potential because that young lady was still alive. Mm-hmm. We have had youth that have died that we served. And that's a different kind of situation because they're not walking around anymore. There's not an opportunity for them to bump into somebody else or another agency later on in life and say, all right, now I'm ready. It's over. So how do we deal with that? This young person that we built a relationship with, a rapport with, that we got to know and had good times and bad times with, but we had time with. And now there is no more time. We had a young lady who died recently that we were serving. Was somebody who could light up the room with the smile and personality and the just the charisma. Mm-hmm. And when we found out about her being killed, this was a transgender, and when we found that out, there's, and this is not the first time, unfortunately, that we've had to deal with this kind of a thing, but there's just a quiet and unspoken just mourning period that happens among the staff members. We may not really say much to each other, but we feel it. Yeah. And we have to share that with the youth. We have to process that with the youth who also spent time with this person. This was their peer. They knew her better than we did. But to be able to come together and celebrate the life of this young person the way that we did on this campus, lifting up balloons, prayers, memories, and afterward, in the spirit of this young person, dancing and having a good time. Wow. That helped all of us get through. Because, it's one thing as a staff member to mourn and just get through it with staff. But for these other homeless young people to see that their lives matter enough to be celebrated in that way. Absolutely. That in itself can change their lives. That in itself can move them forward and motivate them to accomplish their goals. Because yes, there is loss, but now they've gained a sense of being at a place like Covenant House where they know their lives matter. Even after they're gone, they're celebrated in that way. It's just and so that helped me get through that situation. And I know it helped a lot of other people get through it as well. Yeah, it's funny because, when it boils down to it, no matter where we are, how rich we are, poor we are, whatever, we all just want to know that we matter. And I think what you guys give them is something, what you give them that's tangible is real. It's significant. It's huge. But what I'm really blown away from is the intangibles you give them. It's that unconditional love. It's that openness. It's a sense of family. It's a sense of, it's something that's making me very emotional because, I know that if I were in that situation, I would want a place like the Covenant House, to be there for me because, we can all be there and, we can all have kids that have been there, right? I see my kids sometimes and go, what would happen if my wife and I died in a car accident? What would happen to my kids? Where would they go? What would they do? They've got issues. They've got things they're dealing with. What would happen to them? And to know that your place exists is huge. Thank you so much, Jumbe, for opening my eyes, opening my heart. This was really beautiful, and I know that the listeners are going to appreciate not only the scope and the breadth that you described the Covenant House, but also the emotion that you conveyed and showing the dedication of everyone. So I can't wait for more interviews. I can't wait for more for more staff members, and this is unbelievable. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity and the platform to be heard and allow the voices of the youth to be heard. So So appreciate that.
Honestly, I have no words. I can't tell you what I felt. I was sitting there listening to Jumbe. The level of love and selflessness and care that they exhibit is unbelievable to me. It's I don't even call it a job anymore. It's no longer a job. It's beyond that. It's beyond that for me right now. What they're doing, they've changed that definition for me. It's a calling, and it's powerful. And I don't think that, he's even dug into any of the really, really, really deep parts that has gone on. I think we've only just scratched the surface of what we're about to hear in the Why You Matter podcast, where we're featuring the Covenant House and those kids. And, if this is what I'm hearing from Jumbe, who's very intelligent and has a very articulated way about him, and has a way of, couching our emotions as he's explaining the story, taking care of us as he's explaining what's going on. I can't imagine what it would be like when we hear from the kids, the youths themselves, and what they've been through, and how raw that's going to be. But I can tell you this, that from what I can fathom so far in this podcast, is that these youths, these children, they could be our children. If something happens to us, it could be our children. If it could be us when we were younger, if our parents weren't around, or if we had the wrong kind of parents. It's difficult to explain. I certainly am very lucky and fortunate to have had the parents I've had, to have the structure I've had in my life. So I can't relate to any of this, I'll be honest. But I can say that from what I've learned today, that the job is definitely selfless, and that the future is brighter with the Covenant House in it. The future is better with the Covenant House in it. And the future is more promising with you, all of you, sitting there listening to this podcast, because you are engaging in the shared reality. The reality of our children on the street is now becoming part of your reality. And in taking that time and that energy and that space from your busy lives and all your commitments to listen to this, you've given back just by listening, just by engaging in that shared reality and making a piece of your reality this reality as well. And I really appreciate what you've done, because at the end of the day, it's not only the present or the past that matters to the children, but it's the future we weave with them. It's the one that you and I and Jumbe and the team, work together to make this future for our children on the street a better place. And I thank you so much for engaging in this message. I'm sorry I have no words of wisdom or thoughts to share on this. It's very too emotional for me. But I do want to thank you for sharing this journey with us. And I hope that as we go through this process, I might one day find the words to describe what I'm feeling today.
I'll never be the same.